Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
And I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics on this show range from theology, masculinity, stories, movies, philosophy, books, pop culture, and many other subjects. We often talk about the people we admire and the wisdom that they share, people such as Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. Michael, why are we here?
Today, we are going to talk about Boondock Saints. Our brother passed away 10 years ago, and his birthday's coming up. And so we just figured we would talk about one of his favorite movies, which is Boondock Saints.
Yeah, the Boondock
So let's just get into it.
Yeah, the Boondock Saints is a 1999 film directed by Troy Duffy. And it is about two Irish Catholic brothers who become vigilantes and wipe out Boston's criminal underworld in the name of God. And that's the IMDb summary of it.
Mm-hmm.
The movie stars a very young Norman Reedus, who's famous for The Walking Dead. He plays
his role as Daryl Dixon.
Yeah,
in The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. He's become quite the hot stuff nowadays.
They just started his own spinoff.
Yeah, I stopped watching The Walking Dead. The last season was just too like retread of old stuff and kind of boring. And so I was like, I'm kind of over it.
Yeah.
It was a good show. It was a good show for the first probably 5 seasons, and then it just kind of, I don't know. I think that happens to all shows. I think all shows get to that point. So
we can get into it. I have a theory that shows should basically wrap themselves up in like 4 to 6 seasons.
Yeah.
Like they should.
A lot of people believe that too. Yeah. Some of the best shows ever only had for 3 or 4 seasons. So yeah. And like Breaking Bad actually ended, I think, in 6 seasons. So it's like, and it's probably the best one, if not one of the best, if not the best, television show of all time, in my opinion.
That might be another discussion, but that's another discussion. So
that's another discussion.
Boondock Saints. I remember watching this, years and years ago, and we've kind of talked about this, but it's definitely not PC. It is not politically correct, and doesn't try to hide that fact at all.
Yeah.
It now this is pre-cancel culture. This is 99.
So this is actually pre-internet. I mean, the internet had been there, but it's very small, and social media is not a thing.
Right.
It's before YouTube. I don't remember when YouTube came out, but it's before YouTube became a huge thing
and became a cult classic, like by basically like word of mouth.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there were a lot of, 99 and then into 2000, internet was starting to kind of take off. So there was probably some online forums and stuff like that were talking about it.
Yeah. It was a movie that came out right around the Columbine shootings. And so
that was one of its reasons
for not becoming a success. And it basically went straight to DVD. It played in a couple of theaters and then went right to DVD. There was a famous meltdown of the writer-director. It came out a couple years later, a movie called Overnight. It was a documentary about a couple of friends of his that shot footage that was going to be on DVD for the movie, and they ended up having a falling out with the director, and because he had a couple of meltdowns on set, and just was just kind of shitbag to all the people. So there's a lot of behind the scenes, what do you call it, drama that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a much smaller film than it was intended to be. It was going to be a bigger film. And because this guy kind of burned a bunch of bridges in Hollywood, it became a much smaller film.
Now, to his credit, he really hadn't done much, and he just wrote the script, right?
Yeah, and then it got into Hollywood, and it became this big deal.
He took it to a few places, and he ended up getting like a deal. And then, how did he end up directing it?
It was in his deal. And
really,
then something happened. Something happened with the Weinsteins, which, like, on retrospect, the Weinsteins were terrible people. But they were power producers at the time, and something happened, and he pissed a bunch of them off, and so they ended up dropping his contract, and so he had to make the movie. Like, I think he was going to make it for 15 million, and then he had to make it for 7 or something like that. Anyway, so that's getting into the weeds on this movie. We can do initial thoughts, and then we can get into spoilers. This movie's been around for a long time. One of the reasons we are reviewing it, not just in honor of our brother, but also because of there aren't a lot of good movies out right now. So
go to old movies. And it ain't going to get better with the writer's strike.
Yeah, it ain't going to get better with the writer's strike that's going on.
It's been going on for 5 months, 4 months.
It's been a while. God, and we are going to have a drought of movies that we haven't seen. Obviously, we haven't seen since 2008, when the last strike happened. And the whole strike is stupid because they should have learned their lessons. Like, what was the Transformers 2 came out at right around or right after the writer's strike back then. And I don't know if you've seen that movie lately, but you can tell that there wasn't a writer on that fucking movie, because it is terrible. It is a terrible movie. There's a point in it where a woman where the robots turn into a woman. It's like,
what? Where'd this come from?
The Transformers don't become human. Like, it was so dumb. Anyway, you can tell that anyway, that's a tangent right there. But the Boondock Saints comes out in 1999. I probably didn't see it until probably 2004. I was dating my wonderful wife at the time, and she actually had a friend who told her about this movie, and then she saw this movie with a friend, and she was like, "You would love this movie." Then I watched this movie, and I told Curtis about it, and Curtis loved it so much it became one of his favorite movies. He actually got one of his tattoos.
One of his tats is the so they have a family prayer.
Yeah.
My Lord, for thee, power hath descended forth from thy hand, that our feet may swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow a river forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be. Nomine Patri et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
Anyway, throughout the film, they'll say it.
They'll say it, and it's got some Latin. It's got some Latin in it.
Yeah,
and anyway, so Curtis liked it so much that he got, I think it's either the cross from the movie tattooed with the prayer on it, I think is what it was. Is that what you remember? And it's been 10
I thought
years.
it was a cross, and then it was kind of the words were kind of
on the cross
or down the side.
Down the side. Okay.
I think. Yeah. Anyway.
It's about two brothers who decide to they get involved with, so in Boston they get involved with a crime syndicate. So in Boston there's a bunch of different crime syndicates. There's the Italians, there's the Irish, and there's the Russians. The Russians are kind of coming in on their territory, and the two brothers are kind of broke schlubs. They just go out drinking a lot, and they don't they have kind of aimless lives.
They work at a meat plant.
Yeah,
like a meat packing plant or something like that. And
they're fun loving and they like to have a joke around and have a good time, like as brothers do. And they live together in kind of squalor. And so they get into a fight with a couple of Russian mobsters, and it turns out that they accidentally kill them. And in the process, they get...
Well, I mean, it was kind of self-defense. Anyway,
yeah. And then
they get in a bar fight, and then they come back and they're going to kill him.
Yeah.
So they get in a bar fight, they beat him up.
And
then they come back and they're like,
the Russians
want to kill him after that.
And it was funny because Norman Reedus's character, he's like, it was a bar fight. He was like, we beat your asses. Sore loser.
Bar fight.
It was just a bar fight,
Yeah.
Which is, it happens in these neighborhoods all the time. And if you're Irish Catholic, then you're probably fighting with your brothers and sisters all the time. And there's so many great moments where they fight each other because they're brothers, right? And it reminds me of times where me and Curtis would get like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, so to get back to the plot, so they end up getting arrested, and then they're not being charged because the William Dafoe stars in it as well. He's the cop, he's the investigator. I guess he's FBI.
Yeah.
And he figures out that they are actually innocent, that it was self-defense, and he's like, well, we're not charging you for anything. And they're like, well, can we just stay here for the night? Because they're kind of like homeless. And while they're staying, they both have a dream at the same time while they're staying in this jail cell. And this is like a drunk tank or whatever, which I don't think exists anymore. Drunk tanks don't exist anymore. But anyway, they both have the same dream, and you never see the dream in the movie, but basically you're wondering if they might just be kind of like psycho, but because they have the same dream, they're sitting there going, and they look at each other and it's like, we're kind of called to God to rid the world of scum. So the movie itself doesn't say that specifically, but it is actually implied that they think they are called of God to become vigilantes.
I wanted to talk about this, but in the very beginning, there's a scene where and this scene was odd to me because I don't know exactly what they were trying to say, because the brothers walk up during the speech of the
during mass,
the bishop,
talking
or whoever,
about that scene.
Yeah,
it's a mass,
and he's the teacher is talking, and I'm not Catholic, so I don't know the correct terms.
The correct terms. It's a priest. He's speaking from the pulpit, and they walk
up, and there's a new guy. Apparently he was a new guy. Was there, and he's like, why are they get up to stop him? And one of the guys, like, he's like, no,
one of the other priests,
like one of them that's been around, kind of is like, no. But I don't exactly know what they were kind of getting at, because either everybody just knew them, and I don't, and not that because they weren't vigilantes at this time that we know of.
This is a sign of an amateur filmmaker, because
this
scene, the very beginning scene where they walk past the priest while he's giving his sermon and kiss the feet of the crucifix and then walk out of the church, that I think is a scene that's supposedly after
it's supposed to be at the end. Yeah, I think it was actually supposed to be at the end.
Yes, yeah,
because it was implying that the new priest didn't know these two.
Yeah.
And everybody else knew them. Yeah. And it was kind of a hush hush. No one says anything, but just everybody knew them. and they did their thing, and then they left.
That they were vigilantes.
Everybody kind of knew them as vigilantes. Yeah. So there was some editing that was kind of messed up on the back end, I think, wanting on that.
It's a wonky, and those are the holes that you can find in the movie, right? It's kind of wonky because this is a first-time filmmaker, and he's got all these things that he wants to put in it. He probably doesn't have the budget he needed to begin with because he burnt a bunch of bridges in Hollywood. And so he's like just kind of struggling to put across convey the sense that the neighborhood knows who these guys are and knows that they're vigilantes and knows that they kind of have their own thing going.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to stop them. Like that's the implication of that scene.
Yeah.
And anyway, but the first time viewing, you're like, what is going on? It rewards repeat viewings, because when you see it again, you're like, oh, now I get why this scene is in this movie. That's what I noticed happening a lot in this movie.
Why? So the why is that they had the priest was talking about Kitty Genovese. Genovese is probably how it's pronounced. Because the priest, while they're walking up to go kiss the feet of Jesus and then leave, the priest is talking about this incident that happened in
this is a real
1964.
life
this is a real life incident.
Oh,
yeah, he's talking about it. He's talking about it, and this is kind of a kickoff in the movie. So this is the point of this scene. Is the kickoff of so Kitty was murdered in
Boston.
She was raped and then stabbed outside outside an apartment building in Queens, New York.
Oh, in New York. Okay.
And now the thing is there was the New York Times published an article erroneously claiming that 38 witnesses saw and heard the attack, and that none of them called the police
and none of them did anything
to their aid to aid her. Okay. And they call this, they actually they penned a term for it, the bystander effect, or the Genovese syndrome. So now there has been things that have come out to say that probably isn't true, that 38 bystanders did nothing. There's some evidence there's supposedly some evidence to say that some of them did try to contact the police and let them know that this was going on. But anyway, the priest is mentioning this case. This really happened
in the movie.
So this is a case that's a real case, even though there's some stuff that has come out to say that it might not have been as true as it was portrayed in the New York Times
or in this movie.
Take
that for what it's worth.
It's like, what? Even in the 60s, New York Times wasn't doing good journalism? Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
But the point of that scene is it's pointing out, and the priest just talks about how, 38 witnesses and none of them did anything. And so they are leaving the chapel, and it kind of goes through some things, blah, 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 blah. Then they're at this scene where they both have this dream or what have you. And the dream, this scene was actually really well done. It has the priest talking about the bystanders that do nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this rape and murder that happens, and bystanders that do nothing. And you hear his voice talking when they wake up, and then they feel like it's like God's voice that's saying, I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, and I shall reap havoc on the wicked, something like that. It was, I'm pretty sure, probably a scripture. I think I should have looked that up. Anyway, but there's water kind of dripping down from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's basically like a Catholic baptism. It's symbolizing a Catholic baptism, a christening. And so and then they wake up the next day and they look at each other and they both know
that this is what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
This is what they're supposed to do. So but I did find it very fascinating that they took this supposedly very true incident. Now, here's the thing is that even if this didn't happen the way we're talking about here, there was that gal that got
in the subway
assaulted on the subway and nobody did anything.
Yeah, this is recent. This is actually
been
when 3 or 4 years ago. It was happening during, I think it happened during the riots, the George Floyd riots. So this from?
Is the year published May 27th, 2022. A viral video on social media shows a woman being assaulted on a New York City subway train as bystanders keep a safe distance away from the scene. The video shows an individual acting out on the subway as other passengers move away. The individual pulls one passenger down onto a seat by her hair. The passenger can be seen mouthing, "Somebody help me." Oh gosh, as the individual continues holding
horrible,
on
right?
to her hair while they are seated. None of the other passengers assist her as the individual holds on to her hair and eventually lifts her from the seat.
So what publication is that from?
This is Fox News.
Okay. So even if it's not true,
if it's not true, this happened, right?
Yeah. Even if
this is years and years later, this happened where nobody
helps out,
where nobody did anything.
So the whole point of this movie is that these guys take the law into their own hands and start offing off
and do something.
Yeah, they're just taking out, the mob and stuff like that, and that's what this movie's about. And I would
did we even care to do spoilers? I know it's an old movie, but it's been out for a long time.
We can do spoilers. But I'll just do an overview of this movie. Is a comedy, I would say, more than anything else, because it does go, there's absolutely silliness that goes on, and it's macabre comedy.
Yeah.
Which is funny, but also you're laughing. It's like the Joker and the pencil in The Dark Knight. When you first see it, you're shocked, and you're also laughing at the same time that you're shocked. So, and this movie has a lot of that.
Because the pencil went away.
The pencil's gone, right? But we can get, I think we can get into, do you want to say your initial thoughts on it? I would say it's still a pretty good movie. It just it hasn't aged well in our new society, I would say.
Yeah. Racist jokes, there's
a bit of misogyny in it.
Misogyny. Feel like watching it again, there were some of those editing things where I kind of was just like, that it's kind of a little rough around the edges.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're talking a pretty low budget film, right? So, and a new director, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of moving parts there that just kind of may have kind of fell flat a little bit. I actually did like how they kind of did a back and forth where it would be,
it would be the investigator.
They would kind of build up of where people were going to die. And then they would cut, and it would go to after the scene had already happened. And you've got the detective kind of walking through and figuring out what happened. I thought that was pretty
Well, and it's cool. A really great performance, like a snooty performance from William Dafoe. William Dafoe is probably the most famous person in this movie at the time that the movie was made. Now Norman Reedus is probably more famous than William Dafoe. I don't know. William Dafoe is still pretty famous. So shout out to Billy Connolly, who's actually a comedian, and I've seen a ton of his videos on he became pretty famous in the 80s and 90s, but this is not a comedic role. He makes no jokes through the entire movie. But Billy Connolly's in it, and so he was probably pretty famous at the time as well. Yeah, good movie. Maybe didn't age well, but I still really enjoyed it. Pretty good rewatch. I haven't seen it since Curtis died, so it's probably been 11, 12, 13 years maybe since I seen it.
But yeah, I liked watching it again. I liked catching that, you know, they use that real story kind of as a jumping off point. But yeah, I mean, it does get into, and maybe we can go into spoilers, but it does get into some real tough things about the idea of vigilanteism.
Yeah.
You know, who really has the right to be
to exact
judge,
justice,
jury, and executioner all in one.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of a look into, we just talked about how there were all these bystanders to this assault in a subway,
did anything. Yeah.
And no one did anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like a, you know, I don't think it's really a call, maybe in a masculine fantasy kind of way, a call to, well, we would just, you know, we'd go kill the rapists, you know, or something like that. But maybe it's a call to, well, if you see something wrong happening, do something.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
don't just stand and be
don't fall into that. There was a term for it, bystander syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say the bystander syndrome is that, you know, people will sometimes, they'll just figure that someone else will do something, and they just push that off, that responsibility off onto somebody else.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
That's not okay. We all, like, it goes back to the Jordan Peterson quote of, if we all aspire to do good, then we all collectively flourish.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into spoilers. Spoilers now. This movie is so violent. I had forgotten how violent it is. It is just out there. Like, it's almost like slapstick violence, you know.
When the cat dies.
When the cat dies. Oh my God.
He comes down. One of the guys comes down with his arms and like hits the table, and there's a gun on the table, and it shoots the cat.
Which I don't know about you, but that can't happen. You have to pull the trigger for that to happen. It doesn't
just go off.
It doesn't just go off. So this is a thing that I have an issue with Hollywood. Hollywood always does this thing where, you know, somebody drops the gun and the gun goes off. No, that's almost impossible. It would have to be a faulty gun for that to happen. And it just doesn't happen. And if somebody bumps the gun and the gun goes off, or somebody, like, this is a thing that Hollywood has done. But you have to admit that scene is shocking and then also funny. So the movie has a ton of comedy in it, and it's like, it's gross comedy, right? It's like,
like blowing up a cat,
you know,
and it ending up all over the wall.
All the wall. And then they have like a picture of it on it. They clean it up and they just put a picture of the cat on there. Oh my gosh. Just stupid.
When was it? There's a scene where Rocco, there's the two brothers, and then Rocco is
their friend. He's like
kind
of
a disgusting friend. It just he's not a but he's kind of the comic relief a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's this moment where he just goes, he's saying the F word just left and right.
Yeah.
And he's just fuck him and fuck her and like all this stuff. And then like
one of the brothers, Norman Reedus,
is just like, well, that definitely, shows the diversity of the word.
Definitely shows the diversity of the word.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Oh man, it's an un-PC movie, and this movie doesn't get made in current Hollywood. I don't think it could be borderlining Grindhouse like movie. It's trying to shock you and like make you laugh at the same time, and that's exploitation films from the 70s. They always did stuff like this.
You say this movie doesn't get made nowadays. Well, I've been saying there should be a movie where basically they take the story or the true story of Sound of Freedom, and they need like a Punisher or a Boondock Saints kind of, or John Wick kind of characters, and they put those two together. And that, I mean, I guess you get that a little bit with Taken, but but if Taken's, you made it more,
you're forgetting, Michael, that Taken's over 10 years old. Like
right.
We don't,
exactly.
In our current day climate, it's all like fluff, and it's all very, I mean, and this could be changing because Sound of Freedom, it has become such a huge hit, regardless of the way Hollywood has tried to block it,
downplay it. Yeah.
But like I said, I don't think in current day Hollywood this movie gets made because it's so un-PC. It's not politically correct. It has off-color jokes all throughout it. It's kind of degrading towards women in a lot of ways. There really isn't a woman main character in it. As far as the story goes, it's kind of this, it is like a wish fulfillment kind of scenario, right? It's like we wish we could do this to the bad people out there. And I gotta admit, like at the end in the courthouse, there's this scene in the courthouse where they jump up on and they're taking out a bad guy in the courthouse. And
the point of that scene at the end was, and going through the story, basically they're fighting these mobs. They end up getting caught. They get away, but the main mob boss gets away, and then it cuts to a scene in a courthouse where you've got two news reporters that are just talking. It's kind of random, but they're talking about the mob boss
getting away, getting off.
He's on the witness stand, and they're like, look at him, look at the jury, man. He's walking, like he's not going to get put away for nothing. Yeah. Right. And they're just kind of talking about that. Right. Yeah. Now, it's obvious that how would the Boondock Saints know that he was going to get off and justice wouldn't be served, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the point of that's one of the points of the show is that a lot of these, crooks, criminals will get off on technicalities. They'll be back on the street right away. Ben Shapiro's talked about this, that we need worse
penalties,
charges and more severe charges
Mm-hmm.
For molesters and rapists.
Yeah.
Right now, that being said, innocent until proven guilty. There's a lot of stuff running around out there. Let's just say, innocent until proven guilty. But if proven guilty in a court of law, then like these guys shouldn't be back out on the street in 15 months, right?
Yeah.
Like they should be put away.
Yeah, and we did our Epstein episode, like he got away because he had a lot of money. He got away within 18 months.
18 months. He was back out doing his thing months. In 18 months. And they could have, I mean, and that's case in point, right? Case in point. And so these journalists are sitting there talking about this guy is going to walk. And then the Boondock Saints come in, and actually some of the security or some of the cops actually let them in. It's kind of there's a little bit of that in there where it's like now
where the cops kind of know who they are, and
there's becoming this thing where they kind of just, it's like, all right, just go ahead, you know, and then they go in and it's a really cool scene. They basically like their statement to the world,
and they tell the people in the courtroom that pass this along, because we are coming after the evil people, the evildoers in the world. Now, like I said, it often people feel like our justice system isn't working when people like Jeffrey Epstein get off for 18 months of jail time, and this poor woman in the subway gets assaulted and nobody does anything. When we see those kind of injustices, we're kind of going like, we need vigilantes, and that's why this speech is so great at the end. It's probably the best part of this movie, because when the jokey stuff happens, I find myself just kind of going, oh, come on guys, let's get back into the actual movie. And because I mean, sure, there's funny moments, but this scene is played to be really serious. And they're like, we're not here for, people who do drugs, or people who, we're here for the people who do raping and killing and stealing, and one of the things
they say, do not kill, do not rape, do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
Yeah,
these are not polite suggestions.
Yeah,
these are codes of behavior, and those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost. So they're threatening, if you're not gonna abide by these rules,
we're coming after you.
We're coming,
Well, and this is the appeal of the Punisher. This is the appeal of Batman. This is the appeal of all the vigilantes that we admire in our society, because we also realize there's evil people in our society that aren't getting their justice.
I didn't catch this, but this is pretty poetic. Murphy, the brother, he says, there are varying degrees of evil. We urge you, lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into the corruption, into our domain. So that's where you were talking, like they're saying, if like there's varying degrees of it. That's so good. That's very well put. They're just saying,
that whole speech is really
if
good.
You're if you're a druggie and you're just doing your drugs, don't go over into the domain of being a rapist
or a murderer,
because then you're in our domain.
Then you're in our domain, and we're gonna take you out.
Yeah, that's pretty good. For if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three, and on that day you will reap it. And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
So anyway, that's cool. that's a great little anecdote. This is a cult classic, so not a lot of people know about this movie. In fact, movie buff people tend to hate this movie a lot. So this like appeals to a certain movie buff, not. So there's a couple of guys that I follow their online stuff, and they trash talk this movie a lot, and I'm like, but this is a product of the time, probably. So there are things in it that probably, but I would venture to say that maybe we need a little less PC in our entertainment, because it's gotten to the point where, comedians can't say certain things, not that I'm advocating for certain things, because like a movie like this, I think gets canceled today.
Yeah. Anyway,
this movie, it's still pretty good. It's still like, I really like that speech at the end. The speech at the end really kind of caps it off, makes it go, oh yeah, this is really interesting. And it's a shame that they didn't have that much money to do that, because they made a sequel to this that is, in my opinion, way inferior. I
didn't like it. I don't even remember. I don't think I even remember like what happens. Yeah. I don't even remember the second one.
Yeah. I remember Curtis actually rented out a whole theater, and we got a DVD of it and played it in the theater. That was really fun. There was like four of his friends that showed up, and it was us and our wives, and it was actually pretty fun. It was a fun time at the movie theater, but it was like we were both kind of a little disappointed by it.
But I loved the end where they were interviewing. They were supposedly interviewing people out on the streets.
Yeah, out on the street.
That was kind of cool. Like it was
because it's all these different opinions.
There were different opinions. Like, it was, somebody was like saying there's no right for these people to be jury, judge, and executioner. And
then there were other people.
There were other people that are just like, we need
awesome.
These streets cleaned up. Yeah, I think they're awesome. One guy's like, yeah, I support what they do, and I'm gonna sleep sound tonight knowing they're not coming for me.
Yeah.
Can you say the same? Like, I thought that was
pretty good.
Poignant. The guy's just like, listen, I got nothing to worry about.
Because we
all know that they're going after people that are
bad,
that are bad. And I've got nothing to worry about.
And maybe we need this resurgence in our society, because our society, the crime that is spiked since COVID is unbelievable. And we had a series of things happen. We had the defund the police movement. We had the COVID movement. We had all these things, a series of things that happened that have pretty much turned huge major cities in our country, like, it's turned them into hellscapes, where I think every major city has had a massive crime spike in it, and they're not prosecuting like nonviolent crimes. So basically stealing is like a free-for-all in several parts of the country.
Well, there's the broken glass theory, broken glass window theory, that if you allow for the small crimes to happen and go unpunished, then the bigger crimes will happen more and more and more.
More and more.
It's kind of that slippery slope thing, where if you let it pass, then the next time it's going to be worse, and the next time it's going to be worse.
Well, and that story you read about the woman on the subway, like, how much, when Me Too happened, we heard about a ton of women coming forward in Hollywood. But how many stories have we gotten of that poor woman on on that subway.
I wonder how know, we hardly know. It makes you wonder how often it happens. Is that what you're saying? Like,
well, no, but it makes you wonder how often it happens and how often it's not being reported to everyone. That's just the one story that got out. But because of there was Me Too. During Me Too, you heard about all of these stories, and those were wealthy women. Those were women who were making a bunch of money in Hollywood, and then you get Weinstein arrested and all this kind of stuff, and that's a good thing. But I'm also saying, like, what about this poor woman on the subway? You hardly know about this. I mean, it's news. I think Tim Pool did a story on it back when it happened, but it wasn't followed up. You don't hear about it anymore. I mean, people mention Me Too all the time now. Still, I mean. And it was kind of a movement that imploded on itself because they started accusing people who didn't do anything. But the whole point is that what about those crimes to women who weren't famous? You're not hearing about those.
What about the non-famous crimes?
Yeah,
that probably just goes back to the, Richmond, north of Richmond, the rich getting away with crap that the poor don't. Well, and I mean, I don't know, maybe the poor, they just don't hear about it. But definitely if the cops aren't present, it's the poor that suffer.
Yeah.
The rich will figure out a way to take care of themselves. It's the poor that will suffer. Yeah. And that's probably back to what you were saying about the crime rates going up, is if you defund the police and you make all your police quit and stuff, then it's the poor that are going to have the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately.
But
any final thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, I mean, it just it's a good vigilante movie. I think it was funny. So it kind of had some fun sprinkled in there, and I still think it's a classic. I still really like it.
It's a good movie. It's a dated movie, but I still really liked it. It was good. Yeah. Hopefully we get some more movies coming out that we want to see, I don't know about you, but there's some coming out. I just don't care to see them. They just don't look at, I'm not watching any more Marvel movies. Maybe Expendables.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
Check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Share this video, share our channel.
Follow us on Twitter.
Brothers
V Random.
Email us if you want to have us on your show. And we got our email in the show notes. Appreciate everybody watching. Keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. Talk to you later, brother.
See ya.
Now you will receive us. We do not ask for your poor or your hungry. We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us. With every breath, we shall hunt them down. Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill. Do not rape. Do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over
into true corruption, into our domain. But if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.